So I'll get started on intros. Thanks for those of you who are able to join us in real time. Appreciate you coming. I'll introduce our panel speakers, but the purpose of this is really to be conversational, give you a little bit of an inside view into each of these organizations and the types of work that they do and the types of roles that they typically have open. You're free to ask questions within the chat. If you want to send them directly privately to me, if you're more comfortable with that, that's totally fine. We have some sort of canned questions that'll give you a good overview of everyone that we'll run through first, and then we'll move on to student submitted questions afterwards. So I will, without further ado, do some intros. So we have Logan here, who's a lead investigator for the Massachusetts Office of the Inspector General. Thank you, Logan.
Hello.
We have Ricky De La Zerda, who's a tech recruiter for the Massachusetts Executive Office of Technology Services and Security. Thank you for being here as well.
How's it going, guys?
We have Tammy Jones, who's a corporate recruiting manager for the Department of Transportation. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Tammy. And we have John, who's a health communications specialist for the Food and Drug Administration. Thank you also, John. So I guess just to kick it off, if each of you want to go around and just tell us a little bit more about your organization and you and kind of what you do. Whoever wants to go.
I can start. So my name's Logan Davis. I am a lead investigator at the Massachusetts Office of the Inspector General. And my office's role is to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse of public money. So any taxpayer dollars, we have jurisdiction to investigate allegations of theft or waste of those funds. And we also have a prevention aspect where we educate municipal officials and state level officials about how to conduct, legally conduct procurements and different fraud indicators that they can look out for. So that's pretty much our nutshell, and I have been with the office for 5 years.
Great, thanks.
Great. Yeah, so I'll start. So my name is Ricky, and I'm the technical recruiter at the Massachusetts Executive Office of Technology Service and Security. And my major responsibility is to pretty much manage and drive the full cycle recruitment process for all IT-related requisitions. So that's all senior levels. So that could be internships all the way up to a director or chief executive level role. So I'm responsible from drafting the job description to negotiating an offer and all the way up to the onboarding stage. So I've been with the Commonwealth for 6 years, and I pretty much climbed the ladder since then. I was once a HR intern, then my next step was a recruitment assistant, and then as of right now, a technical recruiter.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go.
Oh, go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
I'm Tammy Jones, and I'm with the Department of Transportation out of Washington, D.C., which is where we are headquartered. And I am the corporate recruitment manager. And what that means is that ultimately, I'm responsible for all of the individuals who become made aware of the agency. Under the Department of Transportation, there are 11 agencies to include the Office of the Secretary, which is where I am housed. Also, the FAA, you have federal highways, seaways, and so on and so forth. My job is to bring those operating administrations together, the leads, the recruiters together to put together a recruitment plan for any entry-level occupations that are out there that we plan to fill, as well as recruit for our internships, which we have several at the various agencies, as well as senior level occupations. And so that's what we do at the Department of Transportation. Ultimately, our goal is to make sure that the traveling public is safe and secure.
Awesome.
Hi, everybody.
Not least.
My name is John Zucconi. I'm a health communication specialist for the Food and Drug Administration. And in my role, I'm responsible for sharing health-related communications for our office. The agency is quite large, so we have a number of different centers and offices. I'm part of what's called the Office of Regulatory Affairs, or ORA. And so in this role, I distribute FDA press releases to our stakeholders that can include consumers, private industry, the media, and others. I respond to questions from consumers, from private industry, from the media as well. I conduct outreach activities involving national, regional, and district level priorities, as well as assisting ORA now with recruiting, which is kind of a new thing for us. We've been a part of it, but because of COVID, we primarily were going out to conferences and things and interfacing with the public, but with COVID, everything being virtual now, we're doing a lot more with recruiting. The agency itself is, as I mentioned, quite expansive. Our jurisdiction is over the manufacture of foods and drugs, imports, imported goods coming into the country, medical devices, tobacco, biologics, and biologics you'll know related to COVID-19 would be things like vaccines, blood products, tissue, and finally, bioresearch monitoring. And bioresearch monitoring is really the oversight of clinical trials involving some of the things that I mentioned, medical devices, biologics, and drugs.
Awesome. Thank you. So a couple of you kind of touched upon the specific roles that you're either recruiting for now or will be recruiting for. If you don't mind, if you haven't gone into that, do you mind kind of going around and talking a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can also give you an intro of like the organization that I work for, and then I can tell you some of the roles that we currently are hiring for. So the Massachusetts Executive Office of Technology, Service, and Security. So we're the state lead's office of information technology. So what we do is we provide enterprise level information technology services, including network management, cybersecurity, computer operations, application hosting, desktop provisioning management, and of course, last but not least, modern responsive digital services. So these services that we provide is to serve the constituents of the Commonwealth, and also to serve 40,000 internal stakeholders. So some of the positions that we usually hire for is, of course, on the desk side, operation side, or the computer operation side, it's more of service desk, advanced technical support, desktop support specialist, and then you go to like there's telecom, telecom analysts, telecom architects. So you get your network engineers. There's also project managers, business analysts. Those are IT focused, but the non-IT focused positions, we also have, of course, an HR department. We have a legal department. We have an accounting department, budget team. We also have a strategy team, the digital services team as well. That's all like content, digital content analysts. We have a data scientist team. So we recruit for a lot of things, but most of it is IT focused roles. But here and there, we do have non-IT focused requisitions as well.
Cool, thanks.
I can touch a bit upon the individuals that we hire. So under the Inspector General's office, we have 9 divisions, and with each division, pretty much requires its own set of specialists. So as I said, I'm a lead investigator. The investigations division is the largest, so we typically are hiring an investigator of some level of experience, and that ranges anywhere from intro level, which is where I started. I was hired right out of a co-op position, and we have an intro level investigator / coordinator. We then have line level, which is like a 2 to 5 year, and then lead, which is 5 to 7, and senior investigators. If you're not interested in the investigator track, that's okay, because we also frequently hire accountants. We have an entire legal division that looks out for the legal interests of the office. We have instructors that are in charge of educating the employee and local level individuals about, as I stated, the procurement laws and best practices And for example, you don't have to be an expert in procurement fraud. One of our latest hires was a teacher in the Newton School District for 20 years. So you just have to have a knack for picking up new topics and really being interested in new topics. We also have several policy analysts on staff, as our office has the ability to make legislative recommendations. So we're big into reviewing laws that are on the books and seeing how we can make recommendations to improve them. And we have, I touched upon a little bit, the coordinators, and that's another intro level. And you usually get to do a hybrid of administrative tasks and investigative or analysis tasks, depending upon which division you're hired in as a coordinator. Right now, we don't have too many openings, but typically throughout the year, any one of those positions could be open at any time.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, I'll go ahead. With the Department of Transportation, we hire pretty much any job, you name it, we hire for it. We have a big push for STEM occupations, which is to be expected. But we also hire attorneys, we hire speech writers, we hire HR specialists. Again, you name it, we hire for those occupations across the different agencies. Right now, open to the public, there's about 100 positions that are out, many of them, again, in the STEM occupations, so to include civil engineers or aerospace engineers. And I saw some contract specialist positions as well. And so we're always hiring across the, throughout the year. As John mentioned earlier, because of COVID, yes, pretty much everyone is working virtually with our intern program. This is the first time that we have gone to an all virtual program, but it has worked out, very well. I might add, right now we have about, between the 11 different agencies within the department, we have about 200 plus interns. And so I think that's a really, good thing that we're doing. We're not allowing this pandemic to slow us down, and the generation that we're hiring for, they are accustomed to, working in this type of environment. And so that helps us. That helps us. And we're always looking for, the best and the brightest and new talent coming into the agency. And so, we're happy about what we've seen so far.
Awesome.
And as I mentioned earlier, I'm part of the Office of Regulatory Affairs. So that's the office that is responsible for conducting field activities such as inspections, sample collections, investigations, things like that. So as you might expect, there are a number of positions relative to investigations that we're continually hiring for. I mentioned briefly the different things that we regulate, foods, drugs, et cetera. And so those program areas are almost in a perpetual need for new people. And so some of the positions we'll be hiring for are chemists, from entry level all the way up to specialists. CSOs, CSO is a consumer safety officer, which is the same as investigator. So entry level 7 all the way up to a specialist 12, 13. And CSTs, which is a consumer safety technician. And you can think of that as an entry level office position for individuals with relatively little experience. And it would be a position that is in support of whatever branch they're a part of, whether it be investigations or compliance. And they would really perform a lot of tasks that are similar to an administrative or a secretary's tasks. So I'll be providing Mr. Sanford a number of different job descriptions, as well as center descriptions after our meeting today, and he can distribute that to anybody that is interested.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be collecting info and sending it to y'all so you don't have to figure it out. It won't be a mystery. And you know, you all talked about a really broad spectrum of things that you're hiring for, which is awesome, or hire for that your organization does. What are some like key criteria that you look for in applicants? Like, are there any qualities that really stand out that students can sort of have in mind as they're going out and looking for jobs? Anyone can answer this.
If I were to pick that up for a moment, what I would say is that for FDA, some of the more skilled positions do require a four-year degree or the equivalent of 30 science credits. And outside of that, we're extremely interested in recruiting for diversity. So women and minorities are strongly encouraged to apply, but we have a number of entry-level positions. So I don't want people to feel those that I discussed already just weren't for them. That doesn't encompass all of FDA as a whole. It's really just one small part, the Office of Regulatory Affairs. And so in addition, we hire administrative positions at every level, positions like management analyst and program support specialists. So there's a number of different positions open, and you would want to read the usajobs.gov job description to be sure that you meet all the minimum qualifications, but it's very diverse.
Anything else to add, anyone? If not, we'll move on.
Yeah, I can definitely jump in on that.
Sure.
So pretty much is for some roles, again, some requirements is like a four-year degree, bachelor's degree in computer science or business administration. But there are some positions that a bachelor's degree is not a requirement. Like for instance, I recruited for a cloud architect, and that was mostly based on years of experience and like your technical background. And just what the gentleman before me said, it's all based on the job description and making sure that you meet the qualifications and highlighting those qualifications. I think one of the biggest or the most helpful advice that I received from my Suffolk professor was your resume and your cover letter should not be the same for every single job that you apply for. So they all should be specific to the job that you're applying. So if a qualification is saying, I'm looking for, someone with experience with, Microsoft Office, something, everyone has, but, you highlighting it on your resume, highlighting in your cover letter, and also what you've done with that particular application. Again, some of the entry-level roles, it varies. Sometimes we have them, sometimes we don't. But don't be discouraged. Working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there is so many different agencies and departments that, again, it's just an open door once you have an applicant profile with our applicant tracking system called Mass Careers. And it'll send you notifications of any open requisitions that meet your interests. So if it's human resources, you'll get a notification for all HR positions. So that's pretty much it.
Cool.
So I'll speak more towards like our entry-level positions of what we're looking for in applicants, as I'm assuming most of our attendees are soon to be grads or already grads this year. So one of the big things is I'm typically on the panel for the entry-level investigator type positions and any of our internships. And one of the big things that we look for isn't so much what your degree is in, but that you have some base level office experience and that you've shown some type of interest in public service work, whether that's you worked on some campaign for a ballot question or for an individual, or you worked within another state department, or you took a bunch of policy and government type classes or public accounting type classes, so that we know that you're interested in the public sector. Because there's a big difference, I think everyone here would agree, between the public and the private sector and kind of what drives the individuals. So we're not just focused on your specific degree, but show an interest in public sector. And a big thing that when you get to the point of interview that I always look for is that person that's never satisfied and is always asking questions. So in our agency, we're an investigative agency. So for every answer you get, there should be another why or when or who. So when you get to that interview point, and at the end, and I say, do you have any questions? The person that has 10, 12 questions for me, and they think they're being annoying, those are the people that I like the best. The people that really want to go down the rabbit hole. So if you're a curious person, by all means, we're interested.
That's awesome. Thanks.
There's also another thing to highlight. So when you're looking at one of our job postings, and job description says, a minimum of 2 to 3 years of experience. Those are the things I know when I was in college, I used to be so discouraged because I was like, oh, I only have like 6 months of an internship or 12 months of an internship. But luckily, if it's a union position with the Commonwealth, there's something called minimum entrance requirements where, your bachelor's degree or your associate's degree will substitute X amount of years. So for example, if it's 3 years, a bachelor's degree could substitute for 2 years. And again, it's worth taking a shot. Just like the elder said, if you're showing interest in public service, or if you're showing interest with IT by just what you've been doing, either with an internship or a co-op with your university, that's a huge deal.
That's great. I actually did not know that. So thank you for sharing that.
Not a problem.
What I'd like to share is that with our internships, that's one of the best ways for you to get into the agency. Believe it or not, there are a lot of our jobs that do not require you to have a college degree. Air traffic control, for example. Who knew, right? But you really don't need a college degree. You need high school and 3 years of progressive work experience. But then there are other occupations such as engineering. Of course, you're going to need that degree. But again, an easier way for you to get into the agency is to apply to our internship occupation. And once you apply to the internship, you can, while you're still in school, depending on the internship you apply for, you can still, and it's sort of like a co-op, you can still be an intern once you've completed and graduated from college. Then the opportunity to convert you into a full-time federal employee is there. And I would say that's one of the easiest routes for students. Of course, some of the internship that we offer, you have to apply on USA Jobs, which it makes it competitive. But then there are others where students come on board as contractors. And if after their internship, the manager is very impressed by you, then they will bring you on in a temporary capacity, not to exceed maybe up to 2 years. And so I would say entry level, it would be an internship. That's the best route.
Awesome.
Tammy brought up a valuable point. So TSS has a internship program, not as big as MassDOT. We don't have 200 interns, but what we do have usually 20 to 30 interns during the summer. So we usually kickstart that towards we're recruiting for interns around the winter to this like early spring. So yeah, if you're a sophomore, junior, senior, again, just like Tammy said, that it's probably your foot in the door in getting an opportunity, especially when we try to retain those interns for entry-level opportunities. So again, yeah, we try to convert as many as we can into full-time roles, but there's also times where we either bring them part-time if they're currently full-time in school, or in a contract role where they work full-time hours.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really helpful to share. I know a question that students usually have regarding if they're like intern level in their college experiences. If I enter in a place, like, do they convert interns? What does that look like? So thank you for sharing that. That's good to know. Kind of shifting to a couple student questions that blend in nicely together. This is one of the questions we're getting a lot from students to employers right now, which is, given COVID at your organization, has hiring become more competitive due to delays or hiring freezes? And has it shifted your organization's perspective on what you look for in a candidate, or has that pretty much stayed the same? I guess just generally speaking, how has COVID affected your recruiting, if at all? I know a few of you have already addressed that to some degree or another it has or hasn't.
I would say, just to go back to what Richard and Tammy mentioned, if I may for a moment, the FDA has a pathways program for interns as well as recent graduates. So that'll be part of the packet that I send to Mr. Sanford. But I just wanted to interject there for a moment. As far as COVID, it really hasn't impacted the number of positions that we're constantly seeking and posting to fill. It has disrupted the way we're able to go out and meet with people. We were going to job fairs, for instance, at colleges and universities, and quite obviously we're not doing that. And instead, fortunately, we're still able to communicate virtually.
So on the state level, at least for my agency, I'm not sure if it's the same for EOTSS, Richard, but we are implementing a hiring freeze this fall. However, it's not the end all be all. Some critical positions will still be posted, and the criteria for critical is essentially if a division is down multiple people, because we had an unfilled position prior to COVID, and then we had one open up during COVID. So now we're down 2 or 3 people per division. That division will be able to post for a position. That being said, as far as the internships go, our internship and co-op program will continue. We're an organization of 75 to 80 people, give or take how many interns we have at a time. And I'll be starting the hiring process for internships, and that can be considered a full-time position. You know, we hire full-time interns in October for January through June of 2021. And I would say it'll be a minimum of 2 openings. And those aren't typically posted on our website. That would be something that if you're interested, you want to reach out directly to myself. And we also do heavy hiring through Northeastern. So we'd love some tough students. So the internships themselves are not going to be impacted by COVID. The full-time hiring is slightly on pause.
Great.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. I would say that with DOT, not many of the occupations, the hiring of them has been impacted. Definitely the way we do business, as John mentioned. You know, we are now, we have been looking at it for a while, but now we're forced to recruit remotely. We use a lot of Handshake and any of the virtual career fairs that are out there. That's what we do. And, you know, such as platforms like this is what we do. You know, we attend and we talk about who we are to the students and allow an opportunity for them. But, you know, I look at it as a plus, because many times when we are at conferences, students are unable to travel to the conferences for whatever reason. And so, you know, going to a virtual environment when it comes to recruiting, I'm all for it, actually. It saves a lot of money on the agency as well as the students.
So for TSS, I think it all came down to adaptability. So the pandemic, of course, affected everyone, business perspective, and how we communicate with candidates and how we run our whole recruitment process. So luckily, all of our employees are working remotely. But again, there was a shift of adaptability in using all the applications that we have, such as Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, Cisco WebEx, and it's definitely been a challenge, especially, you know, WebEx people. There's certain situations where you'll have a bad signal. There's certain situations where an individual don't know how to use the application, and those are the things that you have to continuously adapt. But when it comes to the overall employment or the number of submittals that we receive for applications, they've been coming in. I can't really complain about it. It's we were able to communicate with candidates that, you know, may or may have not applied just based on the market itself. And when it comes to the engagement, I think LinkedIn was our biggest friend for recruitment. LinkedIn is the way I found about this panel, and that's how we engaged to future candidates for future roles.
Cool. Yeah, and I like that, you all sort of touched upon, how you're leveraging technology to do things differently. And Tammy, I like how you touched sort of on the silver lining of things and thinking about how there's not just cost savings, but also, it's kind of forced people to adapt to new ways to engage with people, which is kind of nice because things like this may not have been able to happen before because of travel involved or other elements. And now those barriers are not quite there. Not by choice, but it's allowed people to sort of rethink or force people to rethink the way that we recruit and engage. So I think there's encouraging elements to it as well. What is another good question? I guess one that I think is a good one, because I think working for the government is like really nebulous, right? Like it's hard to really conceptualize what that is. And I think a lot of people, especially students who don't have as much experience, hear government and they're like, well, why would I want to work for the government? But, there's lots of perks, obviously, to working for the government, both at the state or federal level. And I was just wondering if each of you could maybe touch upon, a benefit that you see in working for the government that you like, whether it be personally or professionally. Yeah, just to get your take on that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits for me is that as a recruiter, I'm indirectly impacting, lives just based on the individuals that I hire or come on board, or the people or the candidates that, that I made a relationship with that are currently, either doing something in regards to, let's say, a project for Health and Human Services, or revamping the mass.gov website so that individuals have information about the COVID pandemic and how Massachusetts reopening process will be like. Those are, everything you see on mass.gov are individuals from TSS, our digital content specialists that are, modernizing language and providing up-to-date language to all constituents. So I think certain projects that we worked on, you can definitely, it's a feel-good thing. Another project that I could talk to you about is, like, we have a team called MassGIS, which is Geographic Information Systems, and they work with the 911 project, which is they tracked or located all telephone poles within the state. So, for instance, if you're on a cell phone, they'll be able to see where you're currently making that call from. While the difference is, like, a landline is addressed to your particular address. So if you're calling from, 1 Ashburn Place, Boston, Massachusetts, on a landline, it will come as 1 Ashburn Place, Massachusetts. While a cell phone, it's like it'll go from one tower to the other. But anyways, just projects like that, it's just feel good moments, and I think it's one of those things where you achieve something that impacts the community and impacts where you live.
To be honest with you, I wish I knew at the time where I was graduating college that these kinds of opportunities existed. I didn't. So my hat's off to everybody attending today for really taking a hold of your future. And I say that because there are a number of benefits to working for the federal government. The most obvious are things like the health benefits, job security, the agency contributions to your retirement. And I know that sounds like it's a long way off, but believe me, I'm 47 now and I was your age yesterday. And the potential to earn a pension, which is almost non-existent today outside of government. Additionally, the opportunity to move around once you get into the government. A few of the things that greatly benefited me is I started off as a CST, a consumer safety technician, as I mentioned. I had very little experience and I came into government. It allowed me to earn while I was working toward my retirement, but also the government provides you a number of different training opportunities and pathways to different job careers within the government. So you can go from one agency to another. You can, within your agency, as I have done, move around and try and find that right fit. And when you're as large And as important as FDA is, how many things that we're involved in, there's a number of opportunities for you to really excel and have a great career. So those are just some of the things. Also, I would say, wrapping that up, a genuine interest in maintaining a work-life balance. And so all of those things together, especially during COVID, as I say, with the health benefits and the job security, that's critical when you see so many poor folks losing their positions. So it's just been a huge benefit for me and my family.
Yeah, to echo some of what's already been said, the government, you can definitely have a nice work-life balance. If I take work home with me, it's because I choose to, not because someone is forcing me to. But in addition, being in a government employee, especially at the Inspector General's office, I feel like I'm giving back to people in my community. Like I'm on the lookout for them. We're able to get recoveries for municipalities. So it's really satisfying to show people that there is someone out there looking out for them. And that's not exclusive to my agency. That's all government agencies. And it is really satisfying when you talk to someone from the public and it's a positive interaction through a government agency, when a lot of times they associate like government employees as a negative thing. And being able to have that ability to have a positive impact on our communities is really nice. The other thing is my experience as a government employee has been very heavy on training. So I can attend a number of trainings throughout the year, and you know, the agency recognizes, well, I might leave one day and take that training with me, but their government as a whole is very supportive of continuing education of their employees. And that's something that you won't get necessarily in a private company.
I concur with everything that everyone has said so far. My experience, I started out as a volunteer with the government. I'm originally from Ohio, and I started out volunteering at NASA in Cleveland. And from there, you know, I was able to see just how the federal employees operated, and I really enjoyed it. I will tell you that after I graduated from college, because I was an intern at NASA, but after I graduated from college, I went to the private sector for a couple of years, but then I found my way back to federal. And it's very rewarding, the growth and development that I've received. You know, there are mentors who are there willing to help you to get to that next level. And so, and again, I feel like it's rewarding. For me, in the job that I am in, I am the face of the agency. And so I have an opportunity to meet almost everyone that's going to come into the agency. I have an opportunity to sway their decision on whether or not they want to be a part of the Department of Transportation. And that's very rewarding for me because I'm a people person. And so I'm very grateful that I have an opportunity within the federal government to I always tell people my work is my passion. And so I'm passionate about what I do, and then I'm passionate about bringing in the right people into the agency.
Awesome. I love that. And students and new grads who are attending, don't forget you can submit questions too. But I love that, I love that you all touched upon things that, you know, I think I've seen from friends and family who work in government, and it was really interesting for me as a new grad to finish school and then go private, but be sort of, you know, next to a lot of my peers who stuck with government, whether that be state or federal, and to see kind of how those tracked. And I think something that we see from students a lot is, you know, sometimes when they think of government or, you know, very large organizations, they think, ugh, structure, or like too much infrastructure. But, you know, I often find myself having conversations with students saying there's actually a lot of benefits to having structure. And like John touched upon, work-life balance, which is huge. And I have many stories of times when I was in you know, private industry working, insane hours, unhealthy, unsustainable living, and my friends in government would have a much more sort of regulated, even experience. And I just think there's a lot of, there's a lot of perks to like the stability that is afforded. And it's not as like tumultuous as the private industry can be. So I love that you all touched upon sort of the positive aspects of like institutions, right, that are really like core to country or national and state operation, right? There's a lot of like stability, I think, inherently that comes along with that. What other question did I see that was really good? Yeah, this is sort of, again, kind of on a similar sort of personal note, but what's something that you wish that you knew coming into this line of work, or even what's maybe a misconception that you had that you realized was wrong after you came into it?
I know for myself, I, kind of always thought about, well, the government is so big, what do they do? What kind of impact can they really have? I spent most of my working life in private industry and then in the last 13 years with government. And as some of the other speakers mentioned, we're actually, FDA and as an investigator specifically, we're actually on the front lines. We have investigators right now throughout COVID who have been continuing to conduct inspections. And so if you want to feel a sense of mission and contribution to your fellow man, FDA is definitely what I got out of that as being an investigator in both foods and then bioresearch monitoring, or BIMO for short. I was going into hospitals as a part of BIMO, and I was reviewing human clinical trials to ensure the safety and efficacy of those trials. As a part of the foods program, you're going into food manufacturers and ensuring that this food is made safely for everybody's family. Everybody is affected by that. So I really didn't understand years ago, before getting into government work, just how impactful it is and what kind of a contribution, important, meaningful contribution you can really make. So that really surprised me.
When I decided that I wanted to work for the Department of Transportation, I really didn't know all the opportunities that existed. I didn't know that I started at Department of Transportation, but with the FAA. And when I speak to individuals about FAA, we mainly think of air traffic controllers. There's so many other opportunities within just that agency alone that I wasn't aware of. Who knew they had a historian, somebody that's actually there capturing all this information, the communications office that they have, and even the agency developing a social media office, and because they want to remain current with everyone else. And so there were just so many opportunities for me that I was not aware of. And once I got there, my leadership, and I'm very grateful for my leadership, they saw something in me that I didn't see. And so they were very encouraging. And I will tell you, in the federal government, that's one thing that I'm very proud of, is the encouragement that I receive from my leaders to, you can do it. You can do it. We see you here. We see you going there. And so, and it has, come true. And so I'm excited. And, I look forward always to interns, new entry-level students being a part of the Department of Transportation, and even if not the Department of Transportation, just the federal government, because they are our future, and the future is now. And so, it's important that all of you on this call, that you consider going into the government.
Yeah, just similar to what Tammy said. When I was a college student, I was like probably like anyone else, want to work for a Fortune 100 company, ESPN, or whatever the case may be. But I landed a position with the Commonwealth, not knowing a thing of what I was getting into. When I first originally started, I was doing a little bit of marketing because my background was digital advertising. And then, just like Tammy said, there's so many opportunities that in front of you. It's all it takes is asking for it and raising your hand, and it pretty much comes to you. Once they see that you have the effort and that they see the drive, they pretty much will take you to whatever destination you would like to go. So I'm very fortunate for the opportunity in the career that I currently have with the Commonwealth, because again, I had the opportunity to not only build a career in human resources, but also build relationships with individuals throughout the Commonwealth, from MassDOT or EHS, of professionals within my field. So again, once you have a foot in the door, the sky's the limit of where your career could go.
There is absolutely a ton of room for growth, I think, across government agencies. For my agency alone, that's something that the higher ups in the office pride themselves on is we love bringing in interns and building them up. And since I've been with the office, I've moved up four times in 5 years. And who knew that there was that many opportunities for people? But just like everyone has said, if you raise your hand and show that you're really interested and advocate for yourself, the structure of government agencies really does allow you to grow. And I feel like management in general is really good at advocating for their staff, which is fantastic. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and I'd kind of like to tie together a couple things that you guys said too, because, John mentioned something about like pensions, right? Which are pretty much non-existent outside government now. And, something that you've all mentioned at various times is like the mentorship piece, right? And people, genuinely not just caring about you, but being in a position of experience and tenure to actually be able to do something with that, right? And, Tammy, you talked about people that, in your organization that really believed in you and said, have you thought about this? Like, let's get you there. And that certainly happens in the private sector, but I think talking about how that sort of synergizes with, organizations that are structured in such a way where they do have programs like pension programs that encourage people to stay. And so a lot of times in private industry, you may have mentors, but they may be here 1 year and not here the next, right? And certainly there's attrition in every organization, but I think especially in government organizations, you're much more likely to see career tenured folks who have been in an organization and know the organization intimately and are actually in a position of experience and potentially influence to actually be able to like meaningfully mentor people and help them move up those ranks, right? And I think it definitely happens in the private industry, but I think it's less consistent for those like other reasons and factors that I think are coming up. And I think it's compelling. And I think especially in a time where there's a lot of instability and insecurity in the world, and especially in the job market right now, I think that it can't really be overstated how attractive that is. I think, I think it's good for students to consider elements like that when there is like so much in the world that's uncertain right now.
I would add to that just briefly. Well said, John. And I've seen in my 13 years, people leave government to do something in the private sector and come back. And sometimes that's even within the same realm. So I know a drug investigator who left FDA as an investigator, became part of a pharmaceutical company, did that for a while, felt burnt out, and came back to government for that work-life balance. So, I've known people who didn't feel like, graduating college and getting into the government means I can never leave, or it's not flexible enough, or, something of that nature. The government is so flexible and so welcoming that if you feel it's not right for you, you have a position for a while, you get the training and the experience, and then you can go to private industry or another agency or what have you. And if you don't like that experience, the government is very welcoming because we want that experience back, especially if you've gained some in the private industry, you're even more valuable. So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. That's another thing that we see from students is the perception that if they go into government, it is so structured and tracked that if they did want to go into the private industry, they would have a hard time. And I think like you've all touched upon things that sort of dispel some of that, right? As you're talking about the like breadth of roles at varying degrees of technicality. And it's very real experience, right? You've all in one way or another talked about, you know, the real value of that being that you are ultimately working with the public, and your work has, you know, with maybe depending upon the private company, like your work may only affect your users, and maybe your users are a very specific subset of people, right? But if you work for the government, your users are kind of everyone, right? Like Department of Transportation, everybody uses transportation in one way or another, maybe not right at this moment, but you're impacted by it, right? Even your deliveries, like there's all sorts of things, like in some way, the work that you are doing in the government like affects everyone, right? And so that's a really compelling story that I think people don't think about when they're thinking about government. I think they think of it as being extremely insular and hard to get out of or hard to even see out of, right? So I think that it's cool that you've all sort of touched upon that in different ways.
So I'd also like to add the diversity that's within the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where I am and pretty much across government, it reflects what the country looks like. And so in that, you know, and I mean, you know, at the Department of Transportation, we have employee associations. And so those organizations may represent women, persons with disabilities, veterans, gay, lesbian community, Hispanics in aviation, you know, so just across the board, it represents, you know, a variety of individuals, and they all come together, you know, for a common cause, a common purpose. And so the diversity within the federal government, it's very prevalent, it's very important. And, you know, that's one of the things that I value. And, you know, they value students or when they are interns, and they serve as mentors to those students, you know, inviting them in to learn more about not only what they do on a day-to-day basis, but also the organizations that they are a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome to hear too, especially because so many organizations are really struggling with recruiting diverse talent, right? And not just recruiting diverse talent, but retaining and developing and mentoring diverse talent, which is that's part of the picture, right? And a lot of what private industry or lots of organizations fail to do. And so I like that you sort of address that, you know, you look like the populations that you serve. And there's people from all sorts of backgrounds. And because it is, you know, DOT, for example, is such a large organization that really touches so many different aspects, there are so many different opportunities for people to get into the industry and then be mentored and really work their way up, which cannot be said about some other industries. So I think that's really awesome. What else? There was another student question that came in. So this one's not super tangible, but it's one that I saw a couple times, and it was, what do you need most from a new hire right now? How can new hires best support your organization during this time? And sometimes we hear this also asked with like, how can I present myself as that person who can bring that? So are there like interview tips or anything like that that you can share with people in terms of like how they can advocate for themselves in terms of what they bring, or however you want to interpret that question, I guess?
I think one of the main characteristics that we try to recruit for, we're looking for individuals, again, that are driven, that are, you know, that don't need to be micromanaged, I guess, that are, you know, be able to hit the ground running with little to no training. As you can see, there is some difficulties about, you know, meeting face-to-face or, you know, person-to-person trainings at our, you know, primary office. So virtual trainings, it's pretty much, again, adapting to that. So I think it all comes down to being independent, just being, you know, driven, and also also doing as much as you can so that you're supporting your team. When it comes to the interviews, it's how you present yourself, and I think we touched base upon that earlier about, you know, asking questions. Asking questions just not only shows your level of curiosity and how, you know, how invested you are in that requisition, but it makes you stand out. So asking questions and also reviewing the job description and knowing the job description, like, you know, living in it, just so that you can pinpoint, you know, X responsibilities. Like, yes, I have done this, or I've done this, you know, with a you know, a college project. So it all comes down to that when the interview, if you really want to shine.
Thanks.
I think that right now specifically, what has been important for us when looking at new hires is individuals more than ever ability to communicate and being comfortable communicating. I have 5 interns that just started under me last week, and they've all made it very clear they want to have face-to-face communication via Zoom like 2 to 3 times a week. And I was like, fantastic. That means that, like, you're present and you are expecting an ongoing conversation. Whereas in the office, you can get away more with kind of being in your cubicle or keeping to yourself and still be successful. Right now, it's extremely important to be a strong and active communicator with whether it's reaching out about a job or as soon as you start a new job.
That's great.
All good points. Yeah, I would just piggyback on what was said and underscore that being an advocate for yourself, that's made the biggest difference to each of my interviews. In fact, I've only had this job for 4 months, and so I'm continually trying to improve myself. So as Richard mentioned, wanting to hit the ground running and work hard and know your job announcement in and out, and be able to discuss each of the requirements in the announcement related to experience that you have. It's critical to be a self-starter and advocate for yourself. That's very impressive.
Awesome. Thanks.
Now, I would say we are always looking for someone who, at least with me, I'm always looking for someone who is able to show me something new and different. You know, I enjoy the interns every summer. We have them to work on cross-agency projects that the employees, full-time employees, cannot get to, but they have a meaningful impact on the agency. And so how can you show us how to better use social media to promote the Department of Transportation? Or how can you help us write policy for unmanned aircraft systems? Things of that nature, you know, and so we're always looking for them to bring their creativity to the agency so that we may be able to work more efficiently and, you know, remain with the times, because a lot of us, the average age at our agency is, I want to say 45. So, you know, we're always looking for that new talent to come in. And so that, you know, what can you bring to the agency? How can we work together? What can you show me that's new and innovative? That's what I'm always looking for. Leverage
your youth in good ways. That's awesome. Well, I want to be considerate of all your time. So with that said, do you have any parting words that you would like to leave us with? If
I
not,
would
it's okay.
just jump in by saying, when you find our positions advertised on usajobs.gov, please already have your resume up and your transcripts, and ensure that you write your resume to the specific job announcement. Pick out key phrases, relate that experience that you have, and understand that it appears the average is about only 7 days. In fact, last week, I saw an opportunity open for only 2 days. So it's not something to procrastinate with. Have as much as you can, loaded already, an account ready to go, your transcripts uploaded, and then tailor your resume for every announcement, individual announcement that you apply for.
Yeah, I agree with John. I think it's once you see a requisition on Mass Careers, definitely create an applicant profile, and also highlight the different industries that you are interested in or fields that you're interested in. And once you see a requisition, I would immediately apply. Most of our requisitions are usually up for 30, 60 days, but the first 14 days for us is key. That's where we usually look, and that's how we pretty much pick out our top selected candidates to move on to the phone interview. So we move very quickly. So don't procrastinate. Even if you see the job posting, 20 days, 30 days up, it might be too late. So once you see it, apply. But again, Mass Careers is a huge portal that it's used statewide. So it's not just TSS opportunities. You'll see opportunities for all different other agencies like Health and Human Services, and Department of Public Health. You'll see Department of Public Safety as well. So again, tons of opportunities, tons of positions out there. And of course, if you like to communicate privately, you can always add me on LinkedIn.
Same.
Absolutely. With me, yes, just like Richard, I am on LinkedIn, and so you can always reach out to me. If you find that you're interested in an internship or even an entry-level position, and you just want me to help you with your resume, help you to look it over to see if you have everything that you need to apply for an occupation that you may have seen. I'm happy to do so. With our STEM occupations, so we have a direct hire authority. And so in some cases, I might even be able to just share your resume with a hiring manager. So I will encourage you to, feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you might have, and go on our website and see what's out there.
Okay.
Yep. So other than Mass Careers, which the Inspector General's office also uses for open positions, if you're interested in a internship come January through June of next year, I encourage you can reach out to me directly. I believe Jonathan's going to send out our LinkedIn and email addresses. So that essentially fast tracks you, and we can set up a time to meet.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here. This is awesome. Thank you so much. I know it's dinner time. And to anyone on the call, this is recorded, obviously, so we'll send it out so you can reference it. I'll follow up with our panelists to gather any information, contact information, or website information that they'd like to share, and we'll send that out to all of our students as well, so they'll be able to see the recording and the information if for whatever reason they were not able to be here live. But thank you all so much for your time, and I hope everyone has a good remainder of their evening.